Hello, everyone. It's Christina Kishimoto from Voice for Equity, and I have with me a dear friend and colleague, a woman I just respect tremendously, Superintendent Roosevelt School District, Dr. Dani Portillo. So, Dani,
Hello.
I'm glad we have a chance to say hello and catch up today.
Yes, likewise, likewise. It's very nice to see you.
So, I know it's been a busy few weeks, start of school, planning for the rest of
Yeah,
the school year. How is that going?
yeah, it's been going really well. So this is my second year, so my second time around opening up the school year. So of course we learned a lot from last year's first time around and kept notes. We kept notes right after each piece of last year, so we could refer to those this year, and it really helped us. It absolutely did, and our team is stronger now because it's our second year together with the dynamic that we have, and yeah, so it's getting better, and I'm sure it'll be better next year too.
That's fantastic. That's great news. So as long as nothing changes from last year, you have notes. And we know
Of
that's not
course.
true.
Of course, things are different, but at least we have that starter plan, right?
That's
Whereas
right.
last year we were making it all up from scratch.
It's always nice to go into year two and beyond. But so I've heard nothing but amazing,
Yeah.
things in terms of what you're doing and the role you're playing as part of the superintendents who are leading in Arizona, a
Thank
state
you.
where I have just a lot of colleagues and friends, having served there myself. It's just a wonderful place in terms of who's leading in systems. So I'm so glad you're part of that portfolio of amazing superintendents.
Yes, I am. I'm surrounded by great leaders, so that really helps a lot too. And they're all just a phone call away. So yes, absolutely. We're really united here in Arizona.
So I know that you are Hondureña.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Atracha.
we are in Hispanic Heritage Month,
Mm-hmm.
and Hispanic Heritage Month, I believe, has 21 countries it represents, Hispanic countries. And,
Uh-huh.
we started celebrating this as the United States back in the Lyndon Johnson days when he signed it into law in 1968 as a week of celebration, I believe it was. And then Reagan came along and he was asked to sign it into law as a month of celebration. So we started in September 15th. We go all the way through
Yeah.
October 15th.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Why don't we start there? Like, what does
Yeah.
this mean to you? Why does it matter that we have these kind of cultural celebrations today?
Well, I think, we should celebrate our culture all year, every day. But it's important in our space, the spaces that we are part of, right? That we acknowledge it. So a lot of times when I'm in meetings during this month, I take the opportunity to say to the people that are there, happy, whatever the opening of the meeting is, Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. And people usually look at each other like, oh, it's Hispanic Heritage Month, right? But it's really important that we mention it and that we acknowledge it because not everyone else is Latino, not everyone else necessarily celebrating it, but many of us serve mostly Latino students. So it's a great reminder for everyone else when I say it, and I feel like I have permission to say it because it's my month, right? But really, it's as a Hondureña, I think that it's really important for us to acknowledge that there's so much diversity in our culture, right? So specifically when I'm thinking about Hispanic Heritage Month, I love to talk about how Latinos have contributed to the wealth of the United States, to the richness of the United States, to science in the United States. And being Hondureña specifically, one of the things that I always mention is our focus on the environment, right? And how much we value the environment and a lot of the research that's happening in Honduras at some of the universities there. Because also some people think about Honduras and they think, oh, they must not have universities, and they don't really know how complex our economy there is, also in our education system. So I mentioned some of the research that's coming out of the universities. One, El Zamorano is the name of that university. It's considered like the agribusiness, environmental, like Harvard of the Caribbean. So I always mention that, first of all, to bring attention to that there are educated people outside of the United States, and many of them are Latinos, and many of them are focused on things that are going to make the world better, including the United States. So environment, for example, is one of the things that we like to focus on when we're talking about what contributions we have, because it's beyond the food and the music. Though we love food and music as Latinos, we're much more than just that, right? And I think it's important for us to mention our scientific contributions, our financial contributions, our leadership contributions to the US's success.
Yeah, I love that you say that because it is true that sometimes we are so caught up, especially in our US culture,
Hmm.
around the racialized tensions that are part of the United States. I mean, that's a reality. And as educators, we are in systems where we constantly called upon to deal with some of these matters of ways in which there's a lack of equity, and we have to ensure we're leaning into that equity work. And so these cultural celebrations, these heritage months, I think are amazing to talk about the diversity, right?
Yeah.
We're not one same people when we say Hispanics or Latinos. There are 21 different countries represented, and there's a uniqueness to each country. And within those countries, there are also unique histories. And so it's a wonderful time to share and to
Yeah.
learn about one another, even within the Latino community. And then as we go into other heritage months, learn
Hmm.
about other people. And
Hmm.
so I love it. I think it's a wonderful thing that we do in the United States. I think
Yeah.
we do need to listen more deeply to each other's stories. I think it's a wonderful time to do that.
Yeah. And also take the opportunity to do the same. So, like for Black History Month, same thing. I'll go into the room. Happy Black History Month, everyone. And then it forces me because I want to make sure that I know and I can add something to the conversation in these groups. So I'll learn something about Black leaders here in South Phoenix specifically. So I would be able to add that to conversation. People are like, "Oh, really?" But really, it's intentional to show that the same level of interest that I want everyone else to have in the contributions that Latinos make, that I have that same level of interest in making sure that I'm acknowledging the contributions that other groups have made as well. So it's modeling it too. But I think it's really important that we don't miss the opportunity to acknowledge it, and then also to emphasize that we should acknowledge it every day, right? But yeah,
Absolutely.
this is a very special time specifically dedicated to remind us to acknowledge it.
Absolutely. And, this country has never been so diverse as it is in this current era. And so, as educators, our student body is diversifying,
Mhm.
our communities is diversifying each year. 10 years ago, the majority of students in this nation are now students of color.
Mhm.
We're about 54, 56% students of color in this nation as of 10 years ago.
Wow.
And so we're just this amazing community with diverse cultures and languages and perspectives and family constitutions. And now, right, we know that, with the world moving so fast, there's this embracing that we need to do of that. And then there's some challenges, especially as we think of the social political climate that we're in today.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Thinking too about the diversity within our culture, I was thinking about even in Honduras, and I know in other countries as well, there's indigenous populations that don't speak Spanish.
That's right.
And then we have our Black Latinos, Afro Latinos, and Afro Latino cultures in Honduras that also don't speak Spanish or that speak Spanish as their second language. So it's just so diverse. And again, to me, it's beautiful. It does present some challenges in the political context. Um, and I guess that's where we exist in this brave space where we have to be able
That's
to,
right.
yeah,
We a
you
brave
can't
space, I
say,
think, is a great way to put it.
yeah,
That's
you
where
have
we
to be
are.
able to talk about it. So if you don't talk about it, that doesn't mean it goes away.
And
So,
so, speaking about brave spaces, we have so many things happening around us that impact education, but are outside. We have these wars in other countries, the Gaza Strip and what's happening in Ukraine, and now we hear a lot more about the kind of conflicts with Iran.
yes.
Those are really complicated issues. And then now that we're in the midst of obviously our elections for presidential
Mhm.
elections. There are
Yeah.
policy conversations from affordability of housing to the economy to the rights of women to make decisions
Mhm.
about their own
Yes.
bodies and health. I mean, the policy issues are really widespread and complex, and they impact our families and communities. I'm wondering what you're seeing in terms of like the chatter around these policy issues and the national elections amongst our kids. Your students, are they talking about this? Are they talking about something completely different than the adults are talking about?
Well, I know when it comes to policy, I think policy that directly impacts them, they might not recognize that it's a policy, but of course, the school safety and school shootings, right? So that's something that, especially with all the social media threats that many of us experienced across the nation in the last couple of weeks. So that's something that kids are talking about more than they did even a month ago, right? So in Arizona, we started school the first week of August. So we've been in session for a while. And even at the beginning of the school year, they weren't talking about it. But unfortunately, with what happened with the last school shooting, they've been talking a lot about it. And with the social media threats, I think that, you know, it's something that it's hard for me to relate to because I didn't go to school like that. I had other challenges that we were dealing with in that time, but really to get into the mind and the psyche of kids, my little niece told me the other day about, I think they must have had a drill or something, and she's like, Tia, she's like, but well, bad guy, he's not actually coming, but we just have to be ready to when he comes. And then she's in first grade. And then she said something about the table, and she's like, but the table is hard and it can stop the gun. And I was thinking they were probably practicing how to hide behind things or whatever, I'm not certain. I said, yeah, Mihal, but your teacher is going to help you, and we just have to be ready for anything, anytime. And I was like, but you're safe at school. And then she just looked at me with this like look like unsure kind of look, and it broke my heart, to
Yeah.
to wonder what they think even when we're practicing. And it's important to practice, it's important to talk about it. They're surrounded by that. They're surrounded by images and messaging about violence in schools. So that's one
Yes.
one thing. And then the other thing that I hear some of our students talking about is fear about what's going to happen to them or their family members if there's any kind of mass deportation. So that's something that has been coming up quite a bit. And in my community, my majority Latino immigrants, but I would assume that in other parts of the city or the country where there's other immigrant groups, they're probably feeling the same kind of tension about mass immigration.
Well,
So
we've heard, the kind of rhetoric and the awful
yes,
kind of storytelling about Haitians who are
yes,
here
mhm, yeah,
legally in
mhm,
communities, working in jobs in Ohio, and so these things that as adults we try to wrap our minds around and are really complex and do connect to things that we call policy issues. The kids may not call it policy issues, but they certainly hear it, right? There are,
yeah,
like you said, there's messages all around. They're hearing adults talk, they're
mhm,
seeing it on social media, and it creates this really complicated space called education where we
mhm,
want them learning, right? And so how do you stay focused as a superintendent in the design that you need in your schools to stay hyper focused on learning? The kids are learning, right? They're not going to school. They're not going through procedures and
yeah.
processes. They're
Yeah,
not,
it's not a daily
yeah,
event. This is actually, we are here to learn it. We're not
that's
just here
right.
for an activity. Well, one of the things that we have focused systemically on from we were saying from the boardroom to the to the living room is a focus on student outcomes. So our governing board started the process with the executive team last year, and we measure how we utilize our time and really hold each other accountable for how we're utilizing our time in our board meetings, in our study sessions, now in our executive team meetings, and then even looking at my daily schedule. and prioritizing time that's spent on improving learning. So, for example, if I have to give something else up in my calendar, I know that I have to go through the walkthroughs because I have to give the principal feedback on the implementation of different strategies that we're using to improve instruction because it's part of what my governance coach is going to be checking on my minutes. And I'm modeling for them, hey, I'm prepping for my meeting with my coach, and they have a coach as well who's also checking on how they're utilizing their minutes of their leadership structural meeting that they have on their campus. So systemically, we have been very intentional about making that shift about how we utilize our time and now shifting into how are we utilizing our budgets. So our resources of time, people, energy, and money. But it's been a very systemic, intentional. We're trying to communicate it as much as we can, even in our parent leadership groups that we have as well, trying to permeate this focus on learning above everything else. Everything else is important and it impacts learning. But if you don't really focus on the actual learning, then all of those other things become obstacles or excuses or distractors to really focusing on instruction and improving outcomes for kids. So we've seen some modest gains, and we're very excited about that, not only in our learning, but that also improved our enrollment. So our enrollment, while everyone else is decreasing enrollment, our enrollment is increasing. And the biggest change that we've made is focusing on learning and talking about it and everything, and going through all of our systems of celebration, all of our systems of marketing. Everything has to be focused on learning. And what we've seen again is all of these secondary gains that we're making in other areas that are not related to learning, but it is. It is.
Absolutely. So, I appreciate the way in which you continue to hyper focus on being very intentional about having a systemic approach to how everyone's working, how time is being utilized, resources, what's happening in the classroom. But I also know one piece that I want to make sure that we highlight is that you are also as hyper focused on relationships,
Oh,
the
yes.
inclusivity of
Yeah.
people, hearing students for their authentic voices.
Mhm.
And I know you do tremendous work with parental engagement. And so I'd love
Yes.
for you to talk a little bit about that side
Yeah.
too, because
Yeah.
it's that balance of approach that you use that makes the Roosevelt school system such a great system.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, we always acknowledge we're not where we want to be yet, but we're heading in the right direction. And with our parents, so we have about 600 or so graduates now of our parent leadership class. In fact, we're presenting at the National ALAS on our parent engagement. But our parent leadership is what has is really starting to push this transformation forward. So really engaging our parents in telling their stories, their dreams for their kids, and then also advocating for outcomes. Same thing. So that's why we say from the boardroom to the living room. So that parents are advocating for outcomes and knowing their role in it. And their role in it isn't just making cookies for the cookie sale, right?
Right.
It's not just always being our cheerleaders, it's challenging us and knowing that they will hold us accountable as a system. They're going to hold our board members accountable as a system. And then also recognizing that there's a lot of things that are very important to them, but once we start working with them, they all realize the most important thing to them is that their child is safe, loved, and that they are learning, right? So they oftentimes reframe their focus to really how can I support the school in being a place of learning? And in that, because kids are focused on learning, guess what? It becomes safer and bullying decreases as well, right?
That's right.
And then kids feel successful and they feel like they're good at school, and then they start to love school and they feel loved. So all of those things have this interplay, they're not separate, but also it really focuses everyone's attention, including our parents, in is my child, is this system that I'm bringing my most prized prize, prize possession, if we could say. I know they're not a thing, but the thing that I love the most every day, I bring them, and is it really going to make a difference for my child in their future? Right. And in order to be able to do that, they have to be able to have certain outcomes that are just gatekeepers, like their literacy and their math, right? And
Right.
we know there's so many other things as well, but these things are gatekeepers. And I like before where we used to have, and we still do have some concerns about maybe, the pizza in the cafeteria or things like that. Like does my child have enough time for recess and all that things? They are important things. They are. But the majority of their time now as they come together to help solve problem. Oh, that's the other thing, the focus that they have this now sense of like self-efficacy. So they're solving problems. They're focused more so on problems that relate back to learning directly, and that keeps us focused too because our that starts to decrease the tornado of other kinds of stuff, like the whirlwind of other kinds of stuff that distracts the principals from the learning, right? Because they're responding to the parents' concerns. And if the parents are mostly concerned about learning, then their focus is going to be on learning. One great celebration, really quick, for our parents. They identified that, oftentimes in the summer, kids are hanging out at home or not very engaged in other things. And so they themselves created this partnership also with our local library to do a summer reading program. And they organized the whole thing. They figured out how to count the minutes. They figured out how to sign up the kids. They got donors to donate incentives for the kids. And we had a celebration. They organized the celebration. They had the certificates and everything, all run by parents. It was an amazing,
But that's what happens, Danny, right? When you engage parents and family members, our students, our teachers, the community in this really rigorous, respectful, culturally responsive way,
Mhm.
then the conversations and the preponderance of work is going to be around that learning, right? Being
Yeah,
centered. And then they become solution setters for these other things that come up, which is
exactly.
really powerful.
And they help each other. So, All In Education is the organization that supports us as a partner. But they bring together parents from different schools, and then there's different levels of leadership training they can participate in. So, our parent ambassadors, for example, sometimes we might have a conflict or a difference between administration and a parent at a different school, and or even though it's not their school, what they've often done is gone to the meetings and helped to facilitate some of that conversation and and help to really zero in on what is this parent really wanting to express, and like almost like the anger interpreter, right, and the person in the middle, really bringing both sides together on as to what's the most important, then how do we refocus this conversation on it being solution centered, and then also ensuring that we're protecting everyone's time and focus on learning. And is this actually distracting you from focusing on your child's learning, and then also distracting the principal from focusing on their child's learning, and really bringing them together, unite on that. And when you see parents helping parents see that, and when you see parents helping administrators see that, it's amazing. It's amazing to see them in these roles. And hopefully some of them will decide to be teachers, and we can use them in our grow our own teacher and leader
That's
program.
right. That's right.
Yeah,
And I know All in Education is very focused on having some of our parents become board members to understand how to run, how to be part
absolutely.
of governance teams.
Yes.
That's just very empowering. Now, I know that we need to wrap up here, but there's so much to catch up on when I talk to you,
No,
and I
it's
really
exciting. It's
appreciate
fun.
just kind of thinking about some of these issues. I've been, I think, in a space where I've thought a lot about, how do I think about what's most important? What's my most important priorities in my life right now, just on a personal level. And
Yeah.
so I love for us to just wrap up with you sharing, as superintendent at this point in your life, uh, you know, what can you share with us around how do you make sure you protect what's most important in your life because so often superintendents are driven to the expectation that your only important matter is leading a district.
Yeah.
And yet we know you have a family and you're part of a community. You
Mhm.
may have a faith-based community you're part of. Like
Yeah.
there's things that are part of your life that are so important. And so how do you make sure that what's most important you are giving priority to?
Yeah, I feel like this was my vocation and my calling. So one of the things that I'm is most important to me is making a difference. So really leaving a legacy and a change um, that's going to be beneficial for South Phoenix, right? So this area that I chose to serve. And that means that I don't just have my job as superintendent, right? That I'm really leading along with other leaders from South Phoenix to make this place just better. And that's really, really important for me because I have just have so many connections to this geographic area. So in this time of my life, I recognize that I'm one small piece of this massive change that's affecting our community, and um, and it's really important for me to make sure that our efforts as a district and in my gem that I can bring in, right, that that it's really connected and that it's mutually supportive to all these other leaders that are leading in other spaces to really make this be better for kids here. So I try to make space for that by being present in other people's passion, right? So for me, it's education, but I know that we have people that are very passionate about healthcare here in the same space and still serving the same families. They're very passionate about job skills development. They're very passionate about the community college system. Whatever their passion is, just really attending to nurturing that passion in them and ensuring that we're partnering towards supporting the same community, the same partners. So that's something that I do. And then I know that in order to do that and really see the benefits of that, I have to be healthy. So I've been really focusing on, like I have my little aura ring here, but people have different tools that they use. This measures everything. And really like looking at my sleep score, like, I know everything starts to spiral for me when I have lack of sleep. So my sleep score, then closely followed by am I hydrating, right? And then so that on the worst days where I'm seated a lot, at least I am drinking water and sleeping, right? Small steps. But then on those other days, I know I'm looking at did I take my steps, all my steps that I'm supposed to be taking? Like, am I actually making time to exercise and find joy with my family and make sure that I'm in a healthy mental space as well? But yeah, I have to be intentional about it because
Absolutely.
superintendency will suck everything out of you if you allow it, and then you're not really effective anymore. So,
Absolutely. I mean, the workload is bigger than what's actually possible in a work day, in a work year. And so I think this is a great place to end your message around wellness, centering on joy and
yes, it has
you
to
know,
be joyful.
and the
It's so
connections,
hard.
right?
Yeah.
That you're one part, one small part of this collective that's working, right,
Mhm.
towards the wellness of community, and the success of community. And so I think that's a wonderful message to end with. I want to thank you for having the time today to chat,
Yeah.
just catch up and see where you are. I wish you a
Yeah.
wonderful
Well,
Hispanic Heritage Month, and we're going to see each other pronto in
yes.
Alas. I
Yes,
look
yes. And
forward
then
to
when you
seeing you
come to
there.
Arizona too in January, right?
That's right. In
For
January, we have a
DEI
Tech
Women
Power
in
and Equity Conference. Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. Yeah. So, and again, Dr. Kishimoto, thank you for creating this space. When you highlight our stories, it shares that story with other people, but it also feeds us, to know that we're special enough for you to take time out to highlight us. It's really something unique. And thank you so much for that.
There's so many more stories than we can actually tell, and I'm just going to keep chipping away and sharing because that it does. It's like you said, it inspires. So thank you, Danny. Dr.
Thank you.
Portillo, thank you for leading
Thank you.
Asian students and specifically in Arizona.
Thank you. Bye.